Visualizing, paddling out and making it real. Dedication, on a level only you can feel. Motivation, it gets stronger every year. Realization, action cures fear. The Surfcast, yeah.
Welcome to the Surfcast with TR and Hersh, live and direct from deep in the Costa Rican jungle.
Welcome to the second episode of the Surfcast, Out to Sea. Our first episode was maiden voyage, so we're sailing now. I'm TR, your host, here with Hersh Dog, who just got in from a surf session, as usual. How'd it go?
Oh, it was super fun. I had a 2-hour sesh. It was pretty small out there, but I got it done. It was really good exercise. Surfing small waves it takes a lot of work. You have to bring a lot of your own energy and be on a good board and be real quick. And I had a couple where I bogged, and I had a couple where I knew to get into the wave quick. But yeah, I had a great time. It was challenging, but that makes it fun sometimes, you know, the challenge. Tony, what are you drinking?
This is just a smoothie I just made. It's spinach with chia seed, linaza, aloe vera from the plant, papaya, banana, and pineapple.
That's your go-to drink?
That's my go-to.
And how does it make you feel?
My first kind of trace of getting hungry after surfing or doing whatever activity I did, I have one of those instead of food, and then work out more, and then just kind of get extra psyched. And then body doesn't really want food for probably another couple more hours, and then have a huge meal. So yeah, great results, stoked. So I want to apologize to all our viewers we had some audio issues last week. There was a really loud beetle.
That was cicada, actually.
Oh, it was a cicada?
Yeah. Or a group of them in chorus.
Yeah. In the trees right where we were recording at Hersh Dog's house yesterday. So today we're at my humble abode at the studio, and look forward to having a great chat with you guys today. So I want to kick off with about surfing and priorities, because as a surfer, what makes you happy is riding waves, and you work hard for that free time so that you can surf, and riding that balance and finding that fine line between the two is always a challenge. But for some of us, like in your case and my case, we actually threw in the towel on pretty much everything else and committed our schedules and lives around surfing and waves, and then filled in the blanks around that, which has worked out pretty good. And then there are people on the other end of the scale that actually don't even surf anymore, that still love the concept of surfing, and they might even get online and participate in online banter about the sport of surfing, but don't even actually participate anymore. And Hersh, help me out with this, because I need some help in getting my head around where is the point when somebody says, I'm not going to surf anymore.
It's always baffled me, T. Sometimes I used to think that people got out of it at a young age, like, you know, right after high school. It's because they really kind of did it because it was a trendy thing. It's what everyone else did. And then eventually they grew out of it, which then it proved to me that they weren't in it for the love. You know, that they're not a soul surfer, or whatever you want to label it as.
Right.
And the other, I think when you come more in your adult years, your 20s and 30s, I think life just gets in the way. You know, there are, as much as you can control somewhat of where you're going, there are uncontrollable factors and variables around you, you know, wife, kids, well, whatever. You can stumble upon sort of like that Talking Heads song, like, how did I get here? Is this my beautiful wife? Like, I don't know, I think people get away from it. They don't have the time, but it's like a great shaper of mine once said, make time. You gotta make the time. It could be that little hour, get up an extra hour earlier before work and go surf, or whatever. You got to make the time, or work harder, or try to work in bulk and have a day off, so you can just go be a beach bum all day. So, but it's also very hard to get back to that level. I think that when you don't surf for a while, we're talking weeks or months on end or years, you have to. A lot of your muscles, your surfing muscles, atrophy. So you have to. It takes it's almost baby steps on coming back. So it's going to take a lot of sessions, shorter sessions hopefully, to come back from it. But That's what I always trip out on too, is the stoke. Like, how does a stoke die? Is it still kindling in there? Hopefully there's something stoking the fire, hence the word stoke. And I think that stoke, if your stoke becomes compensated, or you think you even lost it, don't worry, there is hope. You can get the stoke back. Once again, let's go back to what I talked about earlier, is you gotta make time somehow. You can do it, man. Get yourself to the water. Get in the water. Don't even really look at the waves unless it's big. You better be careful. But if it's small, don't get agitated. Just go out there and paddle around, get wet. And I almost feel like your lower back muscles for paddling, which is not a very natural movement we do as surfers, that those atrophy. That's almost like your abs of your back, your abdominals. Don't you agree, Tony?
Absolutely.
And yeah, to get your paddle back is one of the hardest things in surfing if you've been away from it for a while. And you know, obviously if you're not doing other exercise, you're gonna gain weight, which is gonna make it harder. You're gonna be paddling on a big ball, basically. Or, Tony, when was that moment when you realized that you're not going, quote unquote, home? Once you were down in Costa Rica, and what was the moment of realization? And when was it, and how did you feel after you felt that maybe sense of liberation?
Yeah, it was mid-90s. It felt just so liberating to my soul as a surfer to know that I was just going to be living day to day, scheduling my life around the waves, and let that dictate my schedule in my life.
It had to be around 2000, the beginning of 2000, when I realized that I could support myself down here and surf every day. And I realized this is what I dreamt of since I was a kid. And I would think at the time I was 26 years old and just loving life, living in Hermosa. And it was beautiful. So yeah, I just felt that it really felt good for the soul. And also I felt like I manifested my destiny to some certain extent. Like, here, I made it now. And and it was just a really special, like something that I'll never forget.
That's amazing, and hopefully can inspire some of our listeners to get out there and do some surf trips yourself and to live a little. And if you have the opportunity to actually move to the tropics and surf every day and get some up and riding time under your belt, you might surprise yourself what you can do with some practice and get yourself in good surfing shape. I mean, there's so many things as a surfer growing up that got us stoked on a day-to-day basis. How were surf magazines to you growing up? What did they mean to you? Were they a big part of your life?
Yeah, I used to study those things like they were like our surfers' Bibles, basically. Study all the contest results more than anything, but mostly the photos too, and awesome.
And what were some of your favorite magazines?
Surfer, Surfing, Breakout magazine.
Yeah.
That was in the 80s. Was that Flames mag?
No. Flame was always surfing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for all you listeners out there, you castaways, Larry Flame Moore was a legendary photographer who passed away. And can you tell us a little about the history of Larry Flame Moore?
Yeah, Flame was amazing photographer, amazing magazine editor, kind of a ringleader of perhaps a style of surf photography in the 90s that he kind of liked the front lit action shot. You can see the guy's face and see the logos on the board, and he was a big guy for me. You know, he definitely put me on, and all the Santa Cruz guys, because he was one who picked all the photos.
Mm-hmm. And which magazines were your favorite growing up, and how did they influence you?
Growing up, I loved the Aussie mags, actually. I really liked reading tracks and
Australian
Australia
Surfing Life,
yeah.
and ASW, right?
ASW, absolutely.
Which was Australian Surfing World.
Right.
Okay.
I really liked those magazines because of the unpretentious way they did the writing, and seemed just so much more realistic to me and more relatable than what was kind of more the corporate style magazines at the time in the US. And then I always liked Beach Happy and ESM and all the magazines that had a little more witty writers and funner content. Speaking of ESM, I used to love Who the Guy. They would always shine the spotlight on guys that were lesser known and just rippers from the Panhandle or from the other side, and household names, kind of everybody. But Hersh, how did you never get a Who the Guy? You, in my opinion, are the best East Coaster I've seen to never have a Who the Guy. But actually, better yet, who is another person that you think should have got a Who the Guy that never did?
Well, thanks, T. Yabra. Who the Guy? I'm not quite sure who the whole roster is. I saw various ones, but I think Tommy Grooms from Ponce Inlet area is a guy who doesn't get much recognition. But
Grooms never got a Who the Guy.
no, I don't think he did. I could be wrong here.
Is that a crime?
Could be.
Should that be a crime?
It should be a crime. There's also so many other John Does up and down the East Coast, because I don't want to single out Florida.
No,
I don't want to be Florida favoritism.
Yeah.
Do Florida.
How about somebody from that you know of from like Jersey or up like in all those areas? God, there's so many. It's probably hard to.
It's hard. I don't want to like have anyone eggy on me. But another guy though from Ponce is really good. Dustin Richardson. Yeah, he's powerful and really good on air game, and he's like one of those guys you watch surfing. You like to watch because you don't know what he's going to do next.
For sure. So what was it like getting the new ESM for you? Because I imagine in those froth-filled days of your youth, you would just really look forward to those new editions.
I did, and actually it was the first, that was the magazine I had my first little photo published. My friend Rick Pollock, I grew up with, surfed it, shot the photo. He was my best friend growing up, and I think we were 17 then, 16, and he used one of those disposable waterproof cameras and got this shot of me doing like this layback finner, and the wave was so small, but it made it look bigger than it was. It was kind of fisheye style.
It's a good angle.
But like $15 fisheye style. And
awesome.
It came out sick. The photo did, and they published it, and I was really stoked, and I got a couple more shots in that mag too. I used to ride for Full Bore Leashes. I don't know if you remember that Australian company.
Full Bore, yeah.
But they put a couple ads, and I had one ad, and there was all these names around the ad, like Mendia and Dwayne Mackey and Baron Knowlton, like all their team, and there I was in the center photo. I was tripping, like, what?
That's so epic.
So,
ESM, shout out.
yeah, thank you, ESM, Tom Dugan, Mez, you guys are legends.
I used to love, I'd get that mag in the mail because I was a contributing photographer and I would read the whole thing. It was so classic.
The blah blahs and
this Gulf Coast blah blahs.
And they still have them on all the archives from when they started the mag in I think it was 92 or 91. Yeah, Dave Dixon was on the first cover.
No way.
Backside no hander barrel, like down in Reef Road or somewhere.
I went to South Africa with them.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the year I heard during the awards. Everyone was on, paying attention to the stage, and all of a sudden he got the gnarliest barrel all the way through Super Tubos. And everyone turned around and were like tripping on the guy. Like, who's this guy? He's out free surfing, probably by himself, because everyone was at the award ceremony. With Roof.
Yeah.
Rufo. Tell me about that trip. You went there with a whole Santa Cruz contingency.
We were rolling with Mike Tabeling, who brought us to see wild animals. We were in this game park taking photos of animals and cruising around in this little car, this little sedan, and 2 cars actually. And we pulled up to these big ass elephants and pulled right up to them in the car, and Tabling's like, get out, let's shoot some photos in front of them. So Roof pulls out his board and he's like standing there. I'm like, get the black flies. We shot like a black flies. Actually turned out to be an ad, standing in front of the elephants with the board. And then the elephants got pissed off and started flapping their ears.
Oh,
and
boy.
We were kind of like, knew that trouble was about to go down. And we all got back into the cars and like took off, like started backing out of there down the road. And then the elephants like went around the bushes the other way. And then we're like, whoa, what's gonna happen? And then they appeared right in front of us on the road. And then one of them comes down the road, like charging the car, comes right at us. And at the last minute makes a turn, like right like 10 meters in front of the car, makes a turn and goes into the bushes.
Oh my goodness.
Like it was about to smash the car and then last minute decided not to. And I was with Molks and Roof and a few of the boys in the car. We were tripping. And then the other guys were in the other car, Tables and those guys. And then we're like, oh my God, the elephant's pissed off. And so we start taking off. And then we see the elephants, like they're on the side of the road, kind of like coming after the car with their ears flapping, like all pissed off.
But you guys got out of there.
Yeah, but we got out of there, and then they just let us go. And
That
then
was it. You guys were the last ones in the park that day, right?
we were the last ones in the park that day. And we're all kind of tripped out, like, whoa, that was a close call. And we're like, wow, tabling was crazy. we saw like lions and stuff, and they threw these huge stakes on the car, and the lions came and like ate them right off, and we're just filming from inside the car,
Oh,
like
man.
right there. It was so nuts. Next day, we turn on the news, and it shows the same exact park, the same wildlife park, and the same elephant killed a German tourist that was probably like doing the same thing that we were.
Smashed their car, right?
Smashed their car, yeah.
With him in the car, like fully.
With him in the car.
Like a beer can, just smashed the beer can.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
And then they sent a game hunter out there to kill the elephant, and they shot it, and the elephant killed the guy, ran him down and stampeded him. And then they sent another guy out with like a machine gun or something who finally killed the elephant. It was like the biggest mess ever. So it was crazy. Like we might have even provoked the whole thing. Did you ever have an opportunity to meet Mike Tabeling?
I did. I met him in Playa Grande. I think it was about 17 years ago, 2002 or 3. And yeah, he's a nice guy. Hung out a little bit with him, and man, what a legend. I didn't really get to surf with them. The waves were small. But yeah.
So tell me this. Who would be on your East Coast Mount Rushmore?
Well, Tabeling for sure, just so much of everything he's done. And I mean, you've pretty much mentioned everything, or a lot of good things about him that I wouldn't even know about him because you know him a lot better than me. But he's definitely up there. And Crawford, who was the 74 Pipe Masters champ, first ever East Coast Pipe Masters champ. Goofy foot too.
He's got to be up
Like
there.
I am. But yeah, and I met Crawford in 2000 when I first was working at the bar in Playa Hermosa, and he showed up and was on a trip, and I was sort of astounded, a little starstruck, and met him, and we were chatting a little bit, and he grabs my hand, and he goes, "Here, feel this," and he touched the top of my head with my hand, and I feel this hole. It's almost like the size of a bowling ball.
What?
Right? Like one of the bowling ball holes. And he looks at me with like such the assurance of grin and says, "That's pipeline."
Whoa.
Heavy, huh? He told me also stories of living in the bushes at Pipe during the whole time on the North Shore. He had hardly any of a budget, and he was eating raw hot dogs, living in the bushes, and he won the Pipe Masters. I think he got like $150 check or something.
What?
But back then, $150 went a long way.
Yeah.
I don't know about in Hawaii, but
And he was on Wide World of Sports, right?
yeah, I guess so. I mean, that was a little
ABC,
before my...
Howard Cosell.
That was 74, so I was only a year old, so I think I missed that episode. Another guy that would be on the wall would be Bernie Crouch, my shaper from since I was at Grom, Mad Dog Surfboards. Out of
He's
Port Orange,
influential,
Florida.
huh?
Oh man, so much in every aspect. Some good, mostly good, some bad. But hence the name Mad Dog. He kind of had a reputation down the inlet, or someone back in the day when it was a free for all, where you didn't get in trouble if you held someone underwater or something like that. And I'm sure you know a lot about that in Santa Cruz days growing up. But we'll get into that at another point. So he, if someone did him wrong or whatever, he'd just paddle up to him, be like, beat it. And if they didn't beat it, he'd go over, push them off their board, flip it over, and punch all three fins out, Heavy stuff. So anyways, he was a great shaper. He still is to this day. And he has a lot of influence from Harold Iggy, Pat Rawson, and really good friends with them. He's been going over to Hawaii for 40 years or what have you. And And yeah, I think he's going to be on that, which most people probably wouldn't vote for him on the East Coast, but I have to put him on there because he's the man. And then we also have Keck. I can't not mention Matt Keckley. He's been a lot of influence to so many East Coasters over the years, not to mention how hard he's charging, big wave prowess has been, and small waves as well, and just always keeping the froth alive. He's so amped all the time, still to this day, and still ripping. So those 4 guys, Keck, Bernie Crouch, Mike Tabeling, Jeff Crawford. I'm going to honorable mention John Holman, who was so ahead of his time for doing airs, no one even knows to this day. 1980 he was doing like reverse airs, or I don't know, maybe mid 80s. This whole air debate thing, we could go down a serious rabbit hole with it, so we won't even touch it right now. But John Holman has an honorable mention.
Yeah.
So those are my 5 guys if we're gonna have it.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I could probably list another 45 guys or more. We could do a bunch of Mount Rushmores for the East Coast, and I think you feel the same about the West Coast. Who would your picks be for the West Coast?
Oh, yeah, this is a fun topic. Okay, my West Coast Mount Rushmore would have to start with Tom Curran. Just that influential during his time and to this day. Perhaps the most well-rounded, stylish surfer ever. Vince Collier and Richard Schmidt for inspiring an entire generation, basically my friends and I, and also breaking new ground in big wave performance surfing. They both blew doors in the Classic Bells '83 when Simon unveiled the thruster and won that contest, and Pipe and the world title. And I'm also going to have to throw on there Joel Tudor because of his influence on modern longboarding, which is traditional longboarding. I think he was really instrumental in getting that going. And then I have to throw some honorable mentions out there to Buddy Lamas, Rat Boy, and Phil Edwards for obvious reasons in their own rights. So that's my West Coast Mount Rushmore. Is KR, VC Rich, Tom Curran, and Joel Tudor. I guess I got 5 guys on mine.
Epic. Tell me a little bit, not to branch off too much, but a little bit about Richard Schmidt. You were saying something about he was the first ever free surfer to get paid.
That is true. He was the first person to get paid by a major surfwear company yearly salary to free surf. So he broke ground in a lot of ways and is still ripping to this day. And his son is on fire also.
Yeah, I ran into those guys one day at an undisclosed beach break south of here, and I didn't know who it was, and they were only 2 guys out, and we were watching, and we said, who are those guys? We said, who is that one? We thought it was one guy who's getting a lot of waves, but it turns out to be Rich and Richie Jr. They come in later, and I said, you guys are collecting out there. Where are you guys from? They're like, Santa Cruz. And right then I said, what's your name? He's all Richard. And I go, oh my God, Richard Schmidt. He's like, yeah. But it wasn't he's a human being. He's so humble too. And Richie Jr. is super cool. So we stopped and had a agua de pipa, which is a coconut water off the tree, and chatted for a little. And I know that my shaper Bernie had gone on trips with him back in the day, and some kind of interconnection. It was trippy because you guys have all been on a trip together as well, or more than one.
Yeah,
Peru
correct.
or whatever.
Absolutely.
So to keep my train of thought going, I told Richard Schmidt Sr. that I said, man, I couldn't figure out if it was Curran. It was up the beach itis case. It was 500 meters. We used meters since when she lived here for a while. North of us, and I saw a guy ripping so hard. I said, man, is that Curran or Reno Abelero? Where did I come up with that name, right? Just out of left field. So when I told him that, he was more enthralled by the Reno call. He goes, wow, I always try to emulate that guy.
So man, that is some nostalgic times. Could just go on all day about the past, but let's get back up to date here. Let's get a little tour talk going.
Well, I'd say we go over Portugal before we dive into anything in the future. Our calls from the last comp were somewhat on and somewhat off. You called the right winner on the men's side, Italo, especially when you said he's like a freaking snowball rolling down a hill and you got to get out of the way. And that's what happened in the final against Jordy. Fully comboed, came out of the gates with like a 10, a 9, and an 8, or I forget what it was. It was huge. He could have won like 3 finals in one heat. And Jordy was just, wasn't even eggy that he lost. He just said, he surfed so good. What can I do, you know? So it was kind of cool. It made the tour race a lot tighter. So yeah, you called Italo to win. I called Jordy to win. I was wrong there. I wanted Kaloe to win, but he didn't even make the final. And on the women's side, you called Caroline final like I did. But it was a Caroline and Lakey final instead. We're going to be going into pipe soon for the men's world title, and the women's world title is going to Honolulu Bay. Currently, there's about 85 points separating first and third place. Italo and Jordy Smith, respectively. Gabrielle's right on Italo's tail, and Felipe is right behind those guys, probably only 100 points behind. So it's going to be really tight at pipe. So the title race is still pretty much wide open between the top 4 or 5 guys. Kalohe might be in the mix if he wins the event and something crazy happens with the other competitors. And then we also have John coming back to compete at pipe, which is sick because he's going to try to overtake Slater as the second highest placed USA surfer to try to qualify for the Olympics next year. And being that John's still up there on the ratings, he could totally qualify. Still, he's going to qualify regardless if he surfs pipe or not, but it's hard for him to pass pipe up.
Imagine a goat versus baby goat heat that decided whether he makes it or not.
That would be amazing. Be 2 storybook. But yeah, that would be sick. I hope they match up at some point. We have the Triple Crown starting soon. Sunset Beach starts November 13th. We have some heavy hitters showing up, all the guys in the primes. There's even a lot of local Hawaiian contingent that have seeds as well. And one of the picks I see is like an outside shot, which Zeke Lau, he's not safe on the tour whatsoever. I think even if he wins pipe, he won't qualify for the CT still. If my calculations are correct, I mean.
And how is he looking on the QS?
He just moved up from getting second place over in Sunset Beach. He moved up to 48th spot. He moved up 29 spots on the QS, which he hasn't really done many events this year, but he has 2 results to drop, which are only 600 and 360 points. So 960 points in 2 events. He'll easily garner all those points and then some in each event. So, and you know how he is in Haleiwa and Sunset. He's won Sunset multiple times. I can see him coming in from behind, doing good in both events. And
that would be awesome if he requalified.
Wade Carmichael in 46th spot, but he's pretty safe on the tour. Josh Moniz is 40th spot. He's looking to drop at 900 and 700 as his lowest scores. Griffin, 35th place. He might have problems if he doesn't do well at pipe, so he's going to have to do well in the Hawaiian Triple Crown, which he usually does. 3,000 QS at Sunset. The Vans Pro just finished up. David Funsell finished first. Zeke second. Jack Robinson third, and Barra Mamiya fourth. Jack Robo had a heat with a 9 and a 10, and almost a perfect heat. The 10 I saw later on, and it was the longest threaded barrel I've seen at Sunset, at least in contests on video, and it was sick. If you haven't had a chance to see it, you should check it out. So Barra Mamiya moved up a lot on points, so he's right there in striking range of qualifying. We have a QS Phillip Island coming up too, just to break it down here and finish up here the tour talk. A 1,000 men's, a 1,500 women's. And I saw in the draw, I like to go on the PDF and notice, I always look at birth dates first almost. I look at the names and I screen on the birth dates. I saw a guy that was born in 1966. I thought, wow, this guy's, 7 years older than me. And all of a sudden I look at the name Bradley Gerlach.
Rad.
That guy has just been inspired from day one, and he keeps the stoke alive. He's been surfing throughout all these decades, right? Or you think he's taken a few breaks?
He takes a lot of breaks, but I think that's what keeps him so psyched.
Can't wait to see what he does in the comp. He could probably just smash some fools.
He certainly could. He's ripping so hard still to this day. So on the second round draft of Team Anti-Over-It, we're building quite an epic squad here. Who's your new picks, Hersh?
I'm going to add the McCabe brothers, John, Mike, and Matt from Ventura, California. Also, Gavin and Shane Beshen. You know the Beshens. I've never actually officially met them, but they seem like anti-over-it people.
Totally. Okay, my team, Anti-Over-It, round 2 draft picks are Dave Nelson, Nelly, Darshan Gooch, and JJ Walsh and Frankie Walsh, brothers. All of these inductees embody pure stoke, motivation. They're always down to get out there and surf, get busy, and with a smile on their face and an infectious love for the sport and all other things that they do, that it inspires countless others. Welcome to Team Anti-Over-It, fellas.
Sunscreen. We all bring it, but you got to remember to reapply it. Every hour on the hour, basically. Come in, rehydrate, check the waves, get a visual from the beach, put more sunscreen on on your dry face, and then go back out.
So what you're saying is dry and reapply.
Exactly. Wow, you're a poet and you knew it. And also follow up with moisturizer, not only at night, but anytime you're not in the water. There's a certain moisturizer you can buy, various brands, and it helps the skin recover and get ready for the next morning if you're on these marathon surf trips.
On this week's travel tips, I'm giving you guys a 4-for-1er. Bring your own pillow, sheet, hammock, and mosquito net. It doesn't take up that much room. You can string it up just about anywhere. Car breaks down, no worries. String it up between a couple trees. Nighty night. Wherever you go, you're gonna have your own pillow, your own sheet, and no bugs are gonna get you. So that's my travel tip for today.
What are your best travel picks for November and December?
This is really Caribbean season, and my favorite places to go this time of year are Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Tortola, Bocas del Toro, Panama, and Salsa Brava, Costa Rica.
Yeah, I noticed you have been going more often than not to Dominican Republic. What has allured you there to go there for so many seasons directly, and how many different breaks do they have to offer there?
Yeah, DR is my favorite spot because there's really quite a few breaks and the conditions tend to change quickly, so you get a particular set of swell and wind direction. That's get out Google Maps and look at stretches of coastline that will have good conditions at least, and you travel there and go there, and oftentimes you're surfing a new spot for the first time because people don't do all that much exploring there. And then all the main spots are super fun, and the place has such a good vibe that all the people that do surf there, they kind of like surfing together at Encuentro at least once in a while to see each other, and then all go out to all these other breaks that are kind of unnamed that are going off this time of the year. And also the nightlife, of course, it's no secret that it's really exotic nightlife there. You have bachata and merengue music are from that island. So listening to it and dancing to it there under the palm trees and the warm Caribbean evening breeze, it's pretty amazing. There's nothing like it. And the combination of surfing in that place, the really friendly local people, that's kind of what makes it my favorite place this time of year.
How about Jamaica?
Jamaica also I love for different reasons. It's such a spiritual, cultural place, and especially if you grew up on reggae music like I did and Jamaican culture, you get to go there and see all the different places that all the amazing albums were recorded, and surf on these really quite dynamic little cobblestone point break setups. And I've got some really good friends there that love sharing their island, their culture, bringing you to the best spots day and night. So super fun.
You've been to a lot of places around the world a few times or so. What's been your most inspirational trip?
My most inspirational trip, without a doubt, was actually close to home. It was to Spirit Rock Meditation Center in Marin County for a mindfulness retreat with Thich Nhat Hahn. And I'm not sure if our listeners are familiar with Thich Nhat Hahn, but he was an amazing author and peace activist who teaches mindfulness and meditation and specializes in sharing ancient techniques with Westerners so that we can enjoy a more peaceful life in the stressful environments of modern day society.
Wow, that sounds pretty deep.
Yeah, this was a workshop where he was breaking down mindfulness techniques, which have been described as a clever way to enjoy life, because it connects you with the present moment so you can see what's really going on in that moment around you, which is reality. Not a reality that your mind is fabricating, that you're in another world in the past or the future, but in the present moment. And techniques to help us do that oftentimes are breathing techniques, to where you're forced to realize that you are here now. And swimming is another one where you're concentrating on your breath and you become immensely present in the moment.
Yeah, could I interrupt real quick? I've heard before, the reason we use the word present is because it's an actual present. Being in the moment, it's a present to us.
It is the best present that you'll ever have. It's the best gift you'll ever have. And the most important appointment that you have in your life is actually right now with yourself. And you cannot miss this appointment, because if you do, you're missing everything that's going on around you, and those beloved ones of yours are missing your attention, because if you're not present with them or yourself, then unfortunately you're not able to enjoy this precious, beautiful life that we have before us. So in the Western world, we live a very complicated lifestyle where oftentimes it's easy to forget about what truly is around us. I love the example that Thich Nhat Hahn gave us of the stoplight in your city, to use that as a meditation bell. Every time you see a red light, you pull up in your car, use that as what the monks have in the monastery, a meditation bell, where that goes off any time of the day and night. And when you hear the bell, you must come back to the present moment and remember your breath. And whether you're gardening or washing dishes or whatever you're doing, you return to the moment through your breath, through your breathing, to know that you are. And then everybody immediately inside the monastery has that connection together, where there's realization of being in a group setting, which is very powerful. One of the favorite techniques that I always draw upon that Thich Nhat Hahn taught us was to use a red light at a stoplight as a meditation bell. And so when you see that red light, instead of being stressed or in a hurry as you usually are, you just come back to your breath. And then you breathe in and out, you return to the present moment, and then amazing things happen when you return to the moment. You're not stressed anymore, and then the light turns green. You continue on kind of refreshed because you came back to the moment. And I always loved that technique, and I'll never forget the first time I tried it. I was driving down the road, and I came up to that red light, and I was like, dang, I'm in a hurry. And then I said, oh yeah, that thing Thich Nhat Hahn said, I'm going to use this as a meditation bell. So I breathed out, I breathed in, present moment, wonderful moment, and I heard this like in my ear. And I'm like, whoa, what's that? And I look up, and there's a little bird on the power cable. It's just a little bird kicking it. And then I look behind the bird, and it was the bluest sky I've ever seen. I'm like, whoa, the sky's so blue. And I was still in my breath. I was still in the moment. And I noticed the leaves of the tree were so green. And all of a sudden, I'm realizing all these things at the stoplight, sitting in my car, that I never would have realized before, because from a simple technique, I brought myself back to the present moment. And instead of stressing about some irrelevant in reality thing and being out of the moment and eggy, I was brought back to the present moment and actually saw a little moment of nature. It was actually what was going on at that moment, at that place and time. And I was able to connect with that. And we can do that all throughout life, day to day. And in surfing, when you do that, it's just you're enjoying every duck dive, like you said, every paddling, and then riding those waves it's super euphoric. It's the most amazing thing in the world. So I think that surfing and meditation and mindfulness all kind of weave themselves together into something that's incredibly inspirational. And so I really feel like Thich Nhat Hahn and other modern messengers have been able to inspire so many people. And who have been some modern messengers that have inspired you, Hersh?
I would say Don Miguel Ruiz, Mexican writer, wrote the Four Agreements. I read that book maybe 15 years, 20 years ago, and it was life-changing. And it's super basic. I mean, it's deep, but it's basic. It just brings it all back. It ties everything in, and sometimes I go back to it and refer to it at moments in time. Basically, he says the Four Agreements are to be impeccable with your word. And that goes for like, hey, if I'm going to show up at 7, I'm going to be there at 7. And all the way to your word is more powerful than, action sometimes. And you got to realize volume and what words you're choosing to use at that moment can affect someone permanently, especially you don't know what kind of day they're having. So be impeccable with your word. The second one was don't take anything personally. It's like, hey, I saw TR the other day and he freaking big guy me. And I thought that I took it personally, but it turned out you had no time. You had to get down the road to go surf or something. No, not that seriously. But don't make assumptions is the third one. Once again, you see someone and whatever, just don't assume things. It's not good. It makes an ass out of you and me, right? Mm-hmm. The fourth one is always do your best. So I think that explains itself right there. Just don't feel guilty. It avoids a lot of self-guilt and self-suffering. Needless suffering is involved in the book. I suggest anyone reading that book, Four Agreements. I was thinking about it the other day. It's how a song you've heard in a lot of surf movies, it's engraved in our brains. What is it about music that encapsulates our brains and we can have almost like a photographic memory of a song and know exactly that, oh, Chris Ward did that air right now to this part of the song. It's almost, what is it, T? What is it about music? It's so powerful.
Yeah, when you weave it together with the images, you really can control the viewer's experience, which is true filmmaking at its finest. When it comes to videos, music cannot overpower the subject. You don't want, for example, too hard of a music with surfing, because, in my opinion, because surfing is not really that gnarly. Unless it's huge Jaws or something, then you could put some pretty crazy music and it would fit. But crazy music with waves that are just kind of rippable, the music overpowers the surfing, and it makes the surfing look weak. And because you're using that yardstick against it. Whereas really good, powerful surfing, whereas the music, it's got hard edges. It's kind of like the surfing. It's got hard edges, but it's actually pretty fluid and smooth and beautiful. Mm-hmm. And so when you have music that has those attributes and it lets the surfing breathe.
You don't want to outdress your date,
exactly,
so to speak.
Exactly. And I think those favorite surf movie soundtracks that we've had from all those days, they complemented the surfing perfectly. And the surfing was a little bit gnarlier than the music, just a tad. And the surfing was freaking gnarly. Mm-hmm. And the music was...
yeah, right there with it.
Yeah. The surf cast is always going to run the gamut from tour talk, and then we get crazy metaphysical out of left field. That's kind of what I love about the podcast format. Well, I'm so excited to start this voyage with you, Hersh. What is your background with podcasts? Have you listened to a lot of them? Were you a fan of radio before the podcast days? What's your background on this stuff?
Not much of an avid podcast listener, but I've listened to Adam Carolla and Joe Rogan. That's pretty much the extent of it. A couple, maybe Surf Ones was a Surf Splendor. I've heard a couple of David Lee Scales. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I know you've been an avid listener to podcasts for over a decade, Tony. What are your favorite podcasts?
Yes, that's true. I've listened to podcasts since their beginning. And going back before that, I loved radio, AM radio. I used to listen to this dude, Art Bell. He'd come on late night, AM radio, and he talked about like extraterrestrials and crazy stuff. and people would call in that thought they were abducted or whatnot. I also loved listening to baseball on the radio and was fortunate enough to listen to a lot of Vin Scully when I was in Southern California and even on Northern California, and listening to the Giants, sportscasters and the A's and the Niners and all that was amazing. I always loved the radio, Jim Rome, and so I really like all the surf podcasts. I listen to all of them. I think they all kind of bring something to the table, and I think there's room for all kinds of different content out there. Surf Splendor, incredible. As you said, David Lee Scales. I think he's kind of set the standard for what's going on right now, and as far as a lot
Chaz
of
Smith has been on there, right?
Chaz Smith. They have what's called The Grit.
Oh, okay.
And then there's one called Spit with Scott Bass, which is really good too. And then Scott Bass has his own, which is called The Boardroom Podcast, which is amazing. The Ockcast for me is probably my favorite of all of them because he's so legendary and so funny, and he brings out a classic side out of his guests.
It's true. Yeah, I agree.
So I love the Ockcast. Ain't That Swell? Up the Swell Ins. Freaking classic. Super Aussied out. Classic shit. These guys are musicians, studio guys, so the production's amazing, and they've got all these really funny segues and songs, and if you can find it, there's a Jed Smith early Swellian anti-Seppo rant that is freaking crazy. Like, goes way off the deep end. So I don't know. I heard that like a long time ago, about 5 years ago. Well worth the dig up. It's just Aussie filth.
Well worth the dig up. I like that.
And then Lit Podcast is really good. It's with Cale Bell Warren, who is a ripping surfer and coach, and then his partner's a great radio voice. So they're just really great entertainment. And all of these podcasts, I wish that they would upload more content. When I get a download, I'm always looking forward to listening to it, and then I listen to it on my time when I'm working, when I'm editing video or editing photos, and I'm listening to that. It's just classic entertainment. It's like old school radio, but no ads or very few ads and uncensored.
Yeah, you haven't heard that song 400 times.
Haven't heard anything like it,
Exactly.
And so
something fresh and new.
Late Night and Chalky is all time. It's a new podcast. Late Night Larson, Jay Larson.
Yeah, I have. You told me. Yeah. I haven't
It's
tuned
epic.
in.
So these guys, they talk about kind of the surf shop culture, how important that is to our identity of surfers and the sport. That's the true surf industry on the street level, what's left of it. And corporate America is trying to drown that out with Amazon and with pop-out boards and all this stuff, like the mom and pop shop.
Mom and pop shop?
It's super sad, and the true craftsmen sometimes get elbowed out first. And so support your local surf shop, and the Late Night and Chalky podcast is just, I've gotten emotional a couple times listening to them because they surprisingly, you really see how important a part of that culture is when you listen to these people's stories. Moving down the line, the Simo podcasts, I heard a couple of them. I don't know if they're still up there, but I haven't seen them in my box. I
The
gotta search them
Simo?
out. Yeah, Ryan Simmons had
I think didn't he coach the team to gold? Oh my goodness. Anyways.
his accolades are far and wide,
Yeah.
but he had an epic surf podcast. Really broke down a lot of competition, actual kind of technique, and also kind of what's going on the U.S. scene, like who to watch out for next time. And I always appreciate that as a photographer and videographer. If Simo says they're legit, they're legit.
He's the point man, basically.
He's the point man. The Wire with Chris from Shred Show. I don't know. I know you haven't seen any of these, but you got to check all these out.
Oh man, I got a lot
Shred
of homework.
Shred Show. Say that 3 times fast. This guy Chris has had this classic webisode for years, and then now he's the host of The Wire for Firewire, and they've had some pretty high esteemed guests on there and real super epic breakdowns going down. And then there's, of course, the Monday Mass with Cote and Todd Richards. So
Wow.
all you listeners out there that aren't up on all these podcasts, I'm giving you the whole list of the goods here.
Wow.
But these guys have consistency every Monday, and they're breaking down what's going down, contest scene. What I love about the Monday Mass is they have skateboarding and snowboarding, not just surfing, which are the most three epic sports
I
in the
totally
world.
agree. Yeah.
So I love hearing what's going on with skateboarding because, I mean, I actually watch a fair bit of it on YouTube, but I like to hear the inside scoop because these guys are there. And I also love their takeoff on naming tricks, you know, and the way that surfing, a lot of, in my opinion, and we need to touch on this, you and I, on future episodes, is the naming of the tricks. You know, there's kind of two schools of thoughts out there. One is kind of, I'm on this side of the argument. It's like, hey, show some respect to the people who invented these tricks back in the day of skateboarding, even though now you do it surfing. Call it what it was called originally.
All right.
And then there's the new kind of perspective, which is the other side of the table, which they say, hey, surfing is its own sport. Don't try to compare it with skateboarding. We're going to rename tricks because we're surfing on a moving ramp. You guys are on a stationary one. And so there's two schools of thoughts.
This
two
is
arguments to it.
skateboarding.
And, yeah, so that could go on forever. As I said, we'll touch on that on a future episode.
Oh, man.
There was another one called Surf Europe. It was super classic, a little bit ravey, but what you'd expect from Euro. They'd have like crazy electronical music, segues and stuff, but classic breakdown. Also, I want to touch on favorite podcast episodes of all time, and there's been a few of them they're just vintage, where you get so inspired and laugh so hard and think really hard and all that.
Gut-wrenching laughter.
And one comes to mind was the Sal Masekela episode on Surf Splendor. I was so intrigued to hear him break down his personal opinions and his charisma. It was pretty amazing because I'd only seen kind of the commentator side of him. I never had really heard an interview with him or anything like that. His perspectives were incredible, very, very inspiring and very candid. The Tom Curran episode of Ottcast, of course, vintage, where they both ride roller skates.
It was funny, during that interview, I noticed he was just kind of all super mellow, you know, and just like super normal Tom Curran, you know, like just cruising, you know. And then right when Aki said at the end of the episode, like, hey, I heard you like to skate, let's go skate. As soon as his face lit up like a 5-year-old's, and they went and skated. It was awesome.
We have some reader mail for you. We asked you guys to write into our Instagram DM, and you delivered. Thank you very much. Some classic stuff in there. This one right here is from Jacob DeLone. I hope I pronounced your name right there, Jake. The question is, how do you pace yourself through a marathon surf session?
Well, first of all, it's not a foot race, it's a marathon. In order to have a marathon surf day, you have to first already be hydrated very well and warmed up before you surf. And surf mini sessions, you know, hour or 2 hour sessions, come in, rehydrate, you warm up, you surf, and then you warm down. You stretch the muscles you used before, and then just keep rehydrating, reapplying the sunscreen, and waxing your board again. And if the tide's wrong, then you just kind of fix a ding or something, but you keep going back out in the water all day long. Protein powder is a great thing to have on the beach. You can mix it with water real quick, and you're not eating a burger and getting bogged down. Burger time. What happened to that section? No, it passed me up. The cheeseburger held me back.
Great advice. Jake's going to really appreciate that.
Tony, could you add any advice to the marathon surf day?
Absolutely. I like to have kind of my little food program set up and bring it with me so I don't have to leave the lineup to go eat. You know, I have everything in little Tupperware and plenty of water, and then that way you're able to rest, rehydrate, and re-nourish between sessions. So I think between your advice and my advice, and then maybe even a little hammock in the shade action, you know, for part of that rest and recuperation, just that levitating feeling in the hammock between sessions, it feels like it's just gas in the tank to go out there and rip.
I like it. Be on site and remain on site of the waves, the actual waves you're going to surf, and don't lose the plot.
Exactly. Don't leave the beach.
Yeah, because once you leave, it's...
You could stay there and the wind switches and you're the only one on the beach. And then all of a sudden it gets perfect. And it depends on your priorities and what you want to do. If you want to score the good waves, then bring your food to the beach, and that's my advice. Another letter here. Whoa! What do we got here?
We have another letter here from Jennifer Salazar, directed at you, Tony, is how the industry has changed over the years with print, magazine, and all that. How's it affected photographers like you?
That's a great question, Jennifer. The key has been to take everything that you learned and earned in the surf industry and adapt it to today's changing media environment, which isn't the easiest thing for everyone to do, especially those that were really based on film and then didn't make that change from film to digital. But for those of us who really have embraced the change, there's a lot of opportunity out there. So in the past, I worked for magazines, I worked for companies, doing surf video, surf photography, and with the downfall of the surf industry, I've taken all that and now I work directly with the actual people who bought the magazines and the videos back in the day.
So there you go, Jennifer.
On today's Coach's Corner, Hersh, what mental state should we be in paddling into a wave?
Well, I would say try to eyeball what's going on down the line and do what the wave calls for, which what that means is your first setup turn or how deep you want to do your first bottom turn, that's where it all comes from. So if you go all the way down in the wave, you're going to blow the wave if it's going down the line fast. So you have to really pay attention to the pace of the wave and surf accordingly. And you can't come into a wave premeditated unless you're at a perfect spot where the wave's going to do the same thing every time. And I would say just try to mix up your turns and do them in the certain spot of the wave that's going to allow you to get all the way to the end of the wave, surf well.
That's great advice. So take off with an open mind, read the wave, and then give the wave what it gives to you.
Yep, it basically sums it up, but you're always going to have these nanosecond decisions in your mind, like as you're bottom turning and the lips cascading over, then all of a sudden it backs over or backs off, and then you have to change your plan at that moment, like cut your turn short. In certain waves, you might want to catapult down the line. So basically saying, keep an open mind and do what the wave calls for.
Our next question on Coach's Corner, visualization. What's the importance of utilizing this in your surfing?
Think it, feel it, do it mentality. You have to watch surf videos and try to see what they're doing. And so it's all about visualization, like think it, feel it, do it, and believe in yourself at the same time. You have to believe in I'm going to stick this air. Not like, oh, I'm going to float it out there and try to get a good photo. No, it's not going to happen like that. Everyone knows nowadays, they read between the lines. You have to stomp every air. Think about it. I'm going into this, I'm going to stick it.
And that takes practice.
Absolutely. A lot of repetition. Okay, and that could be embedded into your muscle memory after you stick these certain types of maneuvers. And there could be a rough blueprint according to the wave dictation. Video analysis is super important. Watch the footage so you're not fooling yourself. Watch your daily sessions so you can fix those little quirks and iron them out so you don't continue with these bad habits. Hopefully this could become a rough blueprint so you can surf according to what the wave dictates.
So that's it from this episode's Coach's Corner. I think we all can benefit from that valuable advice. So we hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Take that knowledge and inspiration, have some fun, get out of your comfort zone, and go rip.
Go rip, brother! Woo! You!
The Surfcast. Stoke level up.